What's going on, guys? B Scott here with you, and on today's show, we got your wide receiver sit starts ahead of week 5. We'll go through every single matchup, tell the wide receivers that you need to be starting, sitting, flexing, and guys that could be risky plays at the end of the day. So keep locked and loaded right here at the first 4 downs. What's going on, guys, and welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going over your wide receiver sit starts ahead of week 5. So I'm going to be going through every single matchup and telling you about every single receiver on most of these rosters. So before we get to today's content, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff, and then comment. If there's a receiver I missed on or one that you want to hear more about, drop it in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer your questions. And if you got flex questions, sit starts, whatever you're looking for, trade targets, all that stuff, drop those in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer your questions and give you my opinions on anything you could be asking fantasy related. So let's dive right into it. First matchup, we're going to be looking at Thursday Night Football. It's Thursday. I'll have this out today. And Thursday Night Football game matchup. Los Angeles Rams on the road against Seattle Seahawks. You're starting Cooper Kupp every single week. He's been a stud receiver, plain and simple, coming off a down game in which he was targeted a season-high 13 times. You're starting Cooper Kupp every single week. It makes no difference. Robert Woods. This is a tough spot. He's coming off one of his best games, albeit with a touchdown late in that game when it was already decided. But I'd probably be starting him here. He hasn't been great on the season, hasn't had any huge days, but he's doing okay in spots. And I think against the Seattle defense that's really been beat up against wide receivers. So I would be starting Robert Woods probably here. Van Jefferson, he's too spotty to be trusting. Last week, you saw the production that he warranted. I can't trust it going forward on a weekly basis. So I know Robert Woods I can trust. And the coaches come out, and a lot of the team showing their frustrations, talking about wanting to get Bobby Trees going. So obviously Robert Woods, I'd be starting him here. Cooper Kupp, a must start. On the flip side, DK Metcalf, you're starting him, albeit in not a great matchup, going against Jalen Ramsey, the Los Angeles Rams secondary that actually has been susceptible a little bit to downfield wide receivers. So I like DK Metcalf in this matchup last year in the playoffs, 2 touchdowns against this Rams defense. So I'm okay with starting DK Metcalf here. He's looked studly through the first few weeks. Hasn't had the big blow-up game, and I don't think he's going to have a big blow-up game here, but I think he's still going to get it done effective for fantasy. You're starting DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, you're obviously starting him. Little boomer bust. He's been great through the first 3 weeks, dealing with nagging injuries. Played last week. You're going to be starting him here. The Rams have been susceptible, like I said, to some downfield throws to wide receivers. So I like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf in this matchup. Now we look at the New York Jets on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. Both teams on the road. They're going to be this game's taking place in London. And now, coming out today, the Atlanta Falcons are going to be without Calvin Ridley. Now there's no pass catcher I really like in this matchup, plain and simple. I'm not going to start Zacchaeus. I'm just not going to do it, plain and simple. So I don't like any of the Atlanta pass catchers outside of Cordero Patterson. He's flanked as a wide receiver in most leagues anyway. So obviously Cordero Patterson, you're starting him in your running back spot, hopefully. But I'm not trusting into the receiving core for the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm going to be staying away from the Atlanta Falcons pass catchers. On the flip side, New York Jets. Obviously, I like Corey Davis in this matchup. Atlanta Falcons giving up 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. 1 of 7 NFL teams to allow 7 touchdowns to wide receivers. And Corey Davis is getting it done. He got it done deep downfield last week, caught the big touchdown. And he's being targeted heavily. I like Zach Wilson a lot in this matchup too. I think the Jets, honestly, could come away with their second win back-to-back weeks. So give me some Corey Davis. And then obviously, Jamison Crowder, a flex-worthy option this week based on volume in a good matchup, plus matchup. So I could see Jamison Crowder. You could be flexing him here. I think he could see a solid day with the production that Zach Wilson should probably bring against this Atlanta poor secondary. Now we got the Detroit Lions on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. I like Justin Jefferson. I like Adam Thielen in this matchup. Adam Thielen had a down game. Justin Jefferson hasn't had the boom game, but has been very consistent throughout the season. You're starting both these wide receivers. Those are the 2 that you can trust on the Minnesota side. KJ Osborne has shown flashes in spots, but really, he ceded all his production to Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen for the most part. So I can't necessarily trust him as an option this week in a game in which I think Minnesota will be able to put up a lot of points, plain and simple. So on the Detroit Lions side, Quintez Cephus. This is a name that I really like. Last week, 4 catches for 83 yards. The week before that, had a struggle game against Baltimore. Dealt with Jimmy Smith. I knew it was going to be a down game. I told you I didn't really like it in the matchup. But this week, I think Quintez Cephus could make some work, to be honest. Minnesota's given up 300-yard receivers on the season. They've also given up 6 different wide receivers a touchdown. So Quintez Cephus in a deeper league, you got to take a chance on him. I think he's worth some flex appeal. Now we got the New Orleans Saints on the road against Washington football team. Terry McLaurin, you're starting him anyway. You drafted him high. He's playing very, very well. Coming off a huge day. 6 catches, 123, 2 touchdowns. You're starting him here in a tough matchup, albeit not that great of a matchup against the Saints. Saints defense has been okay, but last week got torched by Daniel Jones at home in the Superdome. Makes no sense, but obviously you're starting Terry McLaurin. That's the receiver you can trust in that offense. And Logan Thomas being down, maybe even he sees a bigger uptick in target volume. On the other side, New Orleans Saints, there's not a receiver I love at all. Marquez Callaway, 2 catches on 2 targets for 70-plus yards last week, but I can't trust it. I can't trust Jameis Winston, even in a great matchup here. Washington football team, giving up 10th most fantasy points, the 4th most yards, 2nd most receptions to wide receivers. This is a great spot for the pass catchers, but I just can't trust in the offense, so I'm staying away from New Orleans wide receivers, albeit Callaway. If you want to take a dart throw, hopefully he gets it done, gets that big play, potential touchdown. But other than that, I'm staying away from the Saints receivers this week. The New England Patriots on the road against the Houston Texans. There's only 2 trusting pass catchers in this matchup. Jakobi Meyers, it's obvious. Back-to-back weeks, 12-plus targets, 8 receptions in back-to-back weeks. Houston giving up volume, but not much touchdowns to wide receivers. So you've seen it with DJ Moore. You've seen it with Stephon Diggs. Giving up a lot of yards, a lot of catches, but not necessarily big days to wide receivers. So Jakobi Meyers is a perfect spot for him right here to probably have 8 receptions again, looking to close in on the 100-yard mark. A solid productive day for a flex type option. On the flip side, Brandon Cooks, you're firing him up. Not a great matchup. New England Patriots, 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Cooks coming off the worst game of this season, albeit it was against the Buffalo defense. It's just absolutely destroying teams. And Davis Mills, I mean, he was no match, plain and simple. But this week, it's a little better matchup, and you're living with Brandon Cooks' volume, plain and simple. So Brandon Cooks, a just fine wide receiver 3 flex option this week. Now we got the Miami Dolphins on the road against Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa Bay Bucks, you're firing up all 3 receivers on a weekly basis, plain and simple, with the upside that those guys potentially hold. Plain and simple, you're firing all 3. Mike Evans, obviously a little touchdown dependent. AB, I think he'll be just fine, and Chris Godwin for pure volume. So I like the 3 receivers. You probably got to be starting them here in a plus matchup. You're just going to live and die with all 3 of those guys because on any given week, they can finish with 100 yards. They can finish with multiple touchdowns. On the flip side, Miami Dolphins. Obviously, I like Devontae Parker in this matchup. Will Fuller, placed on IR. Jacoby Brissett, down in the game last week. I'm sure he's going to be down in the game this week. And that's when he started pushing the ball downfield. He was targeting Devontae Parker, plain and simple. Devontae Parker's averaging 8 targets a game, 4 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown last week. And it's just a great spot, plain and simple. 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers. Tampa Bay's given up. Like I mentioned, no Will Fuller. So I like Devontae Parker, and I like Jalen Waddle in this matchup also, albeit last week you saw the volume was down. 3 or 4 targets, I want to say. Not a great day for him. But this week they're going to be having to shoot it out if they want a chance to even hang in this game. They cannot run the football. And honestly, teams have literally stopped even trying to run the football in Tampa Bay. So give me some Jalen Waddle as a possible start this week, and I like Devontae Parker in this matchup. Green Bay Packers on the road against Cincinnati Bengals. You're starting Davante Adams. It doesn't matter. Honestly, I didn't even write any information down because you're starting Davante Adams. You don't even got to talk about it. Set it and forget it. On the flip side, Tyler Boyd, volume-based. Played very well last week. 9 receptions, 118 yards. Is T. Higgins going to be active in this game? That's going to make or break whether I like Boyd a lot more or not. On the flip, and then also Jamar Chase. You're going to be probably firing him here. His worst game of the season last week. Still finished over 10 fantasy points in PPR. So you're starting Jamar Chase here. You're probably firing T. Higgins. This game has a potential for shootout all day long. Joe Mixon might be missing the game. They're going to have to possibly leaning on Samaje Perine. So I like the pass catchers all day for Cincinnati Bengals. All of them have flex appeal this week. Now we got the Denver Broncos on the road against Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh, you're starting Deontay Johnson. That's the only option that makes sense in this matchup. Chase Claypool, if he's active, I don't know if I like it in a tough matchup against a good Denver Broncos defense. The reason you're starting, obviously, Deontay Johnson is pure volume-based. He sees a ton of targets when he's on the field. So you're starting Deontay Johnson based on volume, no matter what, even in a tough matchup. On the flip side, Denver Broncos, who can you trust? I mean, honestly, Pittsburgh Steelers, give up 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. 5 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks to wide receivers. Courtland Sutton just hasn't gotten it done. 0 touchdowns on the season. 1 big game. And 3 very subpar games. So I don't know if I love Courtland Sutton here. Pittsburgh defense, albeit they give up a lot of fantasy points to wide receivers, but is Bridgewater going to be back dealing with a concussion? Is it going to be Drew Lock? If it's Drew Lock, I'd probably take my chance with Sutton, knowing that he's going to be targeted downfield a lot. If it's Bridgewater, I personally like Tim Patrick, but you probably could start both these guys. I'm not really sure at this moment. I'm kind of straying away from these options at this moment because they just haven't been getting it done lately. Philadelphia Eagles on the road against Carolina Panthers. You're starting DJ Moore. He's been an absolute stud. Plain and simple. Set and forget it. You're starting him. 20 plus BPR fantasy points over the last 3 weeks, and he's just killing it. 3 touchdowns on the season. Matches his season total from last year already through 4 weeks. So you're firing DJ Moore. You don't got to worry about it. You saw what Tyreek Hill did last week. Just absolutely torched the Philly secondary. So on the flip side, Devontae Smith, you're probably starting him here, averaging 7 targets a game, 7 catches for 122 yards. Honestly, one of his better games of the season. And the Carolina Panthers have given up 5 touchdowns to wide receivers. So I like Devontae Smith in this matchup based on volume. He's the one receiver you can trust. Jalen Reagor, disappearing act last week, just 1 target, 1 catch. And then Quez Watkins, dealing with a little slight injury. And he's seeing a target uptick, but it's still not enough to warrant starting him. I think the tight ends and obviously Devontae Smith, that's where the offense is going to run through this week. Tennessee Titans on the road against Jacksonville Jaguars. You can't really start a Tennessee wide receiver. You just can't. They're not getting it done. Jacksonville, it's actually a decent spot to be starting a Tennessee receiver, but I can't trust any of them. You saw last week against the Jets secondary that, albeit on paper, looks good. They beat the Tennessee Titans, and Ryan Tannehill was unable to get anything going in that game, especially through the air to these wide receivers. So I don't like a Tennessee wide receiver this week, albeit Julio Jones missed practice. But if he's back and playing, okay. A.J. Brown, I think, is back at practice on a limited basis. If he's healthy, you're firing him up here. But other than those 2 guys, I don't trust a receiver on the Tennessee Titans side. On the flip side, Jacksonville Jaguars. Marvin Jones Jr. and Laviska Shenault, both options for me this week. Tennessee's given up the most fantasy points to wide receivers, the most yards per reception, the most touchdowns. You're starting both these receivers. It's a smash spot in a game in which there should be a lot of points to be had. Derrick Henry, he's going to be able to run effectively more than likely against this Jacksonville defense. So there should be enough points to be had. That offense is getting it going. Urban Meyer, whatever they got going on. But I like Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones Jr. in this matchup this week. Cleveland Browns on the road against Los Angeles Chargers. You're starting Mike Williams. You're starting Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen hasn't been great, but he's been very consistent through the first 4 weeks, plain and simple. Mike Williams has been great through the first 3 weeks. Monday Night Football, it's his actual birthday, and he catches 1 pass on 1 target for 10 yards. So that's a down week for him, obviously. But going against Cleveland team, they're going to probably have to try and get it going through the air because I really think they're going to struggle running the football here in this game. Cleveland's defense played outstanding over the last 2 weeks. I don't necessarily love these guys in this matchup, but you're probably firing them up based on the upside that these wide receivers hold. So Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, you're starting them. On the flip side, Cleveland Browns, I don't trust a receiver at all. OBJ, he's looked okay, but Baker is the problem. Baker has not looked good. He's dealing with, obviously, some shoulder injury in his opposite throwing shoulder. I think it's really affecting his play. So I'm sitting OBJ this week. Los Angeles Chargers give up second fewest fantasy points and just 2 touchdowns to wide receivers. So albeit OBJ, watch him find the end zone. I'll be happy for him, but I'm going to be sitting Odell Beckham this week. The Chicago Bears on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't really love a Bears pass catcher, to be honest, but the Las Vegas Raiders secondary is decimated with injuries. They're dealing with a lot of their corners and safeties missing practice. So honestly, if you're going to start a wide receiver, Darnell Mooney might be a dart throw. He's being targeted at a higher rate, running more routes than Allen Robinson, which is insane to me. And then Allen Robinson, every week I'm expecting to have a get-right game, and it just hasn't happened through the first 4 weeks. Maybe you look to sit him, and it happens this week. But I'll tell you right now, I'd probably be taking him out of my lineups just to be safe because, honestly, he just hasn't performed up to par, plain and simple. On the flip side, Las Vegas Raiders. I think Henry Ruggs could make a big play down the field. 1 or 2 this game. The Chicago secondary hasn't looked great through the first 4 weeks. So give me some Henry Ruggs and a dart throw, a deep flex option. Henry Ruggs, I think, could be the man. And then Hunter Renfrow. He's the most consistent, safe play in this offense. You've seen it week in and week out. Made the outstanding tackle to save the 4th down, fake punt. That was a great play, plain and simple. So I like Hunter Renfrow as a start this week for me. Brian Edwards just hasn't seen the volume and consistency enough to warrant a start, so I'm sitting him. And I like Henry Ruggs as a dart throw option for a potential deep touchdown. San Francisco 49ers on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. You're starting Deebo Samuel, plain and simple. He looks ridiculous. Trey Lance, it's his first game. More than likely starting under center. We'll have to see if that plays out. But either way, Deebo's the one you can trust in this offense. Honestly, Arizona's giving up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers, so you're firing Deebo Samuel all day long. Brandon Ayuk, I still can't trust him at all. You've seen very up and down in his target share. All that stuff just has not been there for me to warrant starting him in any matchup at this point this season out. I'm not saying you need to drop him off your rosters or anything like that, but At this point, he just has not produced at all. So I can't trust Brandon Ayuk completely. No, thank you. On the flip side, a couple pass catchers that I trust on the Arizona side, DeAndre Hopkins, it's obvious. Over the last 2 games against the San Francisco 49ers team last year, 28 total targets. So you're starting DeAndre Hopkins, albeit he's been dealing a little bit with the rib injury, and that's maybe limited his play over the last couple weeks, but I think it's a smash spot here, DeAndre Hopkins, to get back on track. And then also A.J. Green. Yeah, I'd probably be firing him here, especially as a flex type option. San Francisco's been susceptible to wide receivers on the season. They haven't necessarily been great. And A.J. Green, 6 targets per game on the season, 3 straight 10-plus PPR fantasy points, and he's getting it done. He's the most trusted receiver outside of Hopkins on this offense. Christian Kirk, it's complete boom or bust. You saw last week 1 reception. That's Christian Kirk-esque, plain and simple. So if you want to fire him up as a chance that he makes a big play here, I understand. But other than that, that's a complete flyer dart throw. And then Rondale Moore, he's not seeing his playtime change enough for me to warrant starting him. So I'm sitting Rondale Moore, you're sitting Christian Kirk, you're starting A.J. Green, and you're starting DeAndre Hopkins. The New York Giants on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. You're starting Amari Cooper, you're starting CeeDee Lamb. You don't got to really worry about it. CeeDee Lamb has not really played up to par. And Amari Cooper's been banged up throughout this season so far and still producing at a decent level. Had a down game 2 weeks ago, but you saw caught the big touchdown last week. He's not being as good as you hoped, but he's still getting it done. CeeDee Lamb has been a disappointment over the last 2 weeks, almost an afterthought in this offense. But I'm firing him here against the Giants team that really has been giving up a lot of fantasy points to everybody, just passing out a lot of points in general. So I like CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper on the Dallas Cowboys side. And then Cedric Wilson, if you want to take a real dart throw chance on him, he did make the great touchdown catch last week. I understand if you need to take a dart throw, but I'm not necessarily just firing him in my lineup. On the Giants side, I like Kenny Golladay coming off his best game of the season, over 100 yards. And honestly, Dallas allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, the 5th most yards. And Daniel Jones coming off a game in which he threw for 400 yards. Obviously on the road, Daniel Jones has been great fantasy-wise. So you're going to be starting Kenny Golladay here. That's what I would be doing. And then Kadarius Toney in a deeper league. If you got to take a chance on a flex guy, your roster's really thin, slim pickings. Kadarius Toney had 10 targets last week, and honestly, they're going to have to throw the ball against this Dallas Cowboys defense to probably stay with the Cowboys in this game. Saquon Barkley hasn't necessarily been effective running the football, but you see the burst is starting to come back. He's starting to trust his knee, and he's making these great plays, even through the air with receiving work, but on the ground, he hasn't necessarily been dominant. So, obviously, Kadarius Toney in a deeper league, and then I like Golladay in this matchup. Buffalo Bills on the road against Kansas City Chiefs. You're firing almost every receiver in this game, period. Highest over-under. Should be a complete shootout. We'll have to wait and see. Honestly, Buffalo's been playing great. The offense has really been on a roll. The defense has played, albeit they played subpar teams, but they've just completely shut out teams. So you're firing all these receivers. Stephon Diggs must start every week. Cole Beasley, coming off a down game, only 2 targets, 2 receptions. But on any given week can have 10-plus targets. And I think this is another week where it could happen here. I think Josh Allen's just going to be, they're going to be throwing the ball over the yard, plain and simple. So get Cole Beasley in your lineup, flex type option. Emmanuel Sanders playing very effective. So give me Emmanuel Sanders also. You're starting Diggs. And then on the flip side, Tyreek Hill. It's the one guy you have to start. You just have to deal with it. The ups and downs, they're going to be coming. Buffalo giving up the least amount of fantasy points to wide receivers. So Tyreek Hill, you have to be starting him. It's the only receiver you can trust in the offense for the Kansas City Chiefs. So give me Tyreek Hill week in and week out, no matter what. And then we got the Monday Night Football game. Indianapolis Colts on the road against Baltimore Ravens. Marquise Brown, you're going to be starting him. He's been great on the season, albeit 2 weeks ago dropped 2 touchdowns against the Detroit Lions. Should have a touchdown in every single game this season. Already has 3 touchdowns. Made a great touchdown grab, a diving grab last week against a tough Denver Broncos secondary. And I like him this week. Once again, the Colts giving up 7th most fantasy points and the most touchdowns to wide receivers. So give me some Marquise Brown. Maybe we see Rashad Bateman come to life in this game. Obviously, he'll probably be limited a little bit in his first game action. We'll have to wait and see on that. Hopefully, they can really bolster that Ravens weaponry, plain and simple, the wide receiver core. And then on the Indianapolis Colts side, Pittman, you're probably starting him based on volume. Pittman, he's averaged 9 targets per game and played pretty darn well against tough secondaries So I'm going to be starting Pittman even in a tough matchup based on pure volume. So anyway, that's been the wide receiver sit starts at a week 5. Going through every matchup, giving you the receivers I'd be starting, a few that I would be sitting, and obviously a lot of guys this week that you should probably be flexing in your roster. So if you like the video, don't forget, subscribe, share, thumb, bell, all that good stuff, and then comment if there's a receiver I missed and you want to hear more about them. Drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to get back to you. So for the first 4 downs, it's been B Scott, and I'm out.